The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Howdy all, I'm Father Corey Stika, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. Joining me today on the panel is Joanne Mercier. How you doing, Joanne?
How you doing, Father? I'm doing well.
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Unfortunately, as you can tell, Dom isn't here today. He's got some other things he's dealing with, so he wasn't able to join us. So it's just me, the two of us.
This could be very interesting.
It could be. You know, we were kind of going, are we going to be able to fill it out? I was like, yeah, I think we could fill an hour talking. We'll find things to talk about.
Oh, yeah. As long as we don't, start the debate.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I might pull up the iPhone Android debate at the end of the show, but that's a little teaser.
Oh, here we go. All right.
No, but we'll jump right into our main topic, which actually is something that's, I can say, is near and dear to me right now. Because it's giving me better internet access, and it's Starlink. Now, are you familiar at all with Starlink, Joanne?
I am a little bit, just because of what I read in the news, but I'm always looking for alternatives because as an internet user in the United States, I have about two choices, and that's it.
Which is one more than I had before Starlink, so...
Exactly. Well, this is rural versus city, sort of suburban stuff, but yeah, most of us have one or two, and then there's the satellite companies, which, if you sneeze, they go out. Exactly.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about that. But, and for those who don't know, I live in a small town in Montana, a town of about 600 people, I want to say, about 20 miles from the town of Great Falls, the city of Great Falls, which Great Falls actually obviously has a lot more options. And yes, we've got our DSL option. You got the CenturyLink, which is the telephone company, the old telephone company, now just mainly DSL. And that's okay. It works well for download because it's 40 megabits download. That's not too bad.
Ugh.
It's 3 megabit upload.
Ooh.
And we had a lot of problems with that doing with the podcasting and stuff because I have to upload my files to Dom so he can edit them. And it would take forever to upload them. And we finally got that figured out and got that worked out. But it was miserable. So in the other option is like a Verizon Hotspot, the MiFi or whatever they call it, where it's the little hotspot box. And those work pretty well because we get decent LTE speeds here. Again, not comparable to like fiber or something like that, but
and
decent.
See, that's what I have. I'm lucky enough in Rhode Island to have a choice between, cable, broadband, and fiber. And fiber is lovely. I have 500 up and down.
Oh, wow. I could just dream of that.
But
you pay for it. But
I got to throw the but in here. We all know, especially from the last couple of episodes with talking about routers and all of that if you're using wireless, now if you're in a heavily saturated area, that stuff's getting cut into. So maybe of my 500 up and down, I'd like to say I'm getting at least half of that, which is still better than anything. But when you're using it for everything like streaming, my TV every once in a while does the little circle of death because it's not wired in. So my next thing is Ethernet in the house, all over the house. But it's nice to have fiber. But again, it's two choices. So if you don't like the cable company, it's fiber. If you don't like the fiber people, what do you do?
Exactly. And again, MiFis work, but they're not an option you would want for long term because they are expensive. They LTE isn't slow. Now 5G supposedly is going to fix some of that. It's going to really give great speeds, but let's wait and see, especially since it sounds like distance is going to be a big issue with 5G.
As long as it doesn't fry your brain either, it'll be good.
Yeah, don't worry, it'll do that too. Just make sure you wear the tinfoil hats when you're using your MiFi.
And there you go.
But so Starlink comes out, and this is another one of Elon Musk's brainstorms. And, it followed the same pattern everything else. He comes up with Tesla, and everybody's like, you'll never get a car that works. People will never want electric cars. and Tesla takes off like gangbusters. And then he announces, yeah,
Go ahead.
you even see Teslas in Montana, which you would think would be a rough place for it. But I've seen them driving down the interstate, so I mean, they obviously work out here. And then you have oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I just did a road trip, speaking of Tesla. And last time I think I was out on a road trip was probably way before COVID. And you'd go to a rest area and you'd see maybe 5 electric car, gas ups. That's all I can call them.
Yeah.
There had to be at least 25 to 30 Tesla stations, charging stations. And I was amazed at the difference just in a couple of years. So as much as you want to say about Tesla, they're doing something right.
Yeah, and there's one just in Great Falls, just off the interstate. It's like 2 minutes off the interstate, and you're at the charging station. There's restaurants there and everything, so it's a perfect spot. It's a hotel there too, and perfect spot for that purpose. So I mean, Tesla's obviously done well. And then he says, "Oh yeah, by the way, I want to start launching rockets that we're going to land them back, the first stage back down." And everybody thinks he's nuts. And now he's doing it like it's routine. Every day it seems like there's another SpaceX launch going up into orbit, and the first stage just plops down on their little automated ship.
I have to ask, incredible. Do they have an app for that like NASA, or is NASA running their, that you can see, like you can see NASA launches on the NASA app? There
are apps out there. There's I can't remember what it's called. I've got one that it shows, and it was a pick of the week before, but it shows different launches and stuff like that. This was a while ago. I'll have to look that up, but yeah, there's a great app where you can watch that. But of course, then you can sit and watch the launches from start to finish on YouTube.
Oh, okay, all right.
You go to SpaceX's YouTube channel and you sit there, and they've got live stream from the launch, from the rockets, from the first stage, the whole works. It's incredible what they can do. And then now that he's got the rockets, he said, now I'm going to launch satellites and a constellation of satellites into orbit, so that you can have internet, high-speed internet anywhere in the world, low latency. His goal is 1 gigabit. I will say it's not there yet, but his goal is 1 gigabit anywhere in the world via satellite. And again, low latency. And everybody's like, you're nuts. Well, he's done it. Again, that's what Starlink is. Starlink is a bunch of small satellites. And by a bunch, I mean thousands. And this is one of the controversies of Starlink, is that he's launching all these satellites out there. Of these satellites, and you just have a dish. Dishy McFlatface. You got to love the name. That's such an internet name. Oh,
you're kidding. Oh, I wish everybody I had
calls
it
Dishy
for that.
Yeah,
everybody
calls it Dishy, but yeah, Dishy McFlatface is the official name of the dish. So you have a dish in your house, down your house, that auto rotates itself. It's like if you've had DirecTV or Dish Network or the old satellite internet, you had to mount it a certain direction because the entire constellation of their dishes, of their satellites, are in one spot, usually like over Texas, I think is how they vision it. Starlink isn't the same thing. They're not geosynchronous. They go on a regular pattern, kind of like if you've ever watched the track of the International Space Station, you see it doesn't cover the same parts of the Earth. It does like a spiral over the Earth. Well, the Starlink satellites do the same thing, and so the dish can move in something like 180 degrees. You think of 360 degree dome. It can move like 180 degrees and can move itself. So when you power it up, it picks up, looks for a satellite signal, and turns towards it. You can watch it do it.
Oh wow!
It's really cool to watch the dish move, and then when it loses one satellite, it'll move to the next automatically. So in theory, you shouldn't have any interruption. Now, right now, the full constellation, the full shell of satellites isn't complete, so there are going to be breaks. So it might be like, well, we're sitting here doing our show, I'll freeze for a second or two until it finds the next satellite. It's not a big deal. I will talk about that a little bit later, but it's really incredible how it works because, as I said, this is much higher speed internet than the old satellite providers. Again, it's not fiber speeds yet. That is the goal. But it's pretty good. And I'll talk a little bit here when I talk about comparison with landlines in a little bit about what speeds I'm getting.
Yeah, because I'm wondering a couple of things. One, people are concerned about all of these satellites because what goes up must come down eventually.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also worry about traffic up there. Now, I know we have the computer and the technology to keep everybody in their own orbit, but at some point there could be a rogue.
Yeah.
And it's like spins out of normalcy.
And that is a real concern. And also there's been concern for astronomical research, for astronomical photography, that the satellites will be too invasive. Now, I think one thing we need to recognize too, though, is we are talking about, I can't remember, I forgot to look it up, what the altitude that these satellites are flying at, but these satellites are not like packed together. We're not talking about like cars on, an expressway during rush hour.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking, tens, if not hundreds of miles between them. Because I mean, they're a good distance apart. So and they know where each one is. They're tracked. Obviously Starlink is tracking each one of them. They know where it's at. I'm sure NASA's involved in that as well, because of course Starlink or SpaceX and NASA work together quite a bit. So I'm sure they're keeping a close eye on that. Jeff Bezos and Amazon isn't happy because Starlink beat them to the punch, and they keep suing them because of it. But that's another story.
Yeah, well, Jeff Bezos isn't happy, but he's going to do something that I think a lot of people are going to be happy about. If I heard this correctly yesterday, he's putting Shatner in space.
Is he going to bring him back?
Yeah, supposedly, yeah.
One
would hope so. But
Captain
apparently
Kirk
he's doing the
space.
up and down.
Yeah.
The up and down thing. And I'm sure
flights.
All Star Trek fans are now going to be so happy that Captain Kirk actually gets to go to space for real.
Exactly. Even if it's just for a few minutes.
And that's fine. But I can understand, Jeff Bezos, does he have a problem with Elon Musk? Really, are they just not friendly, or because I hear it so much?
I wonder if this is big men competition, shall we say?
Okay, all right.
I would use other words, but I think you get the idea.
That's okay. I perfectly understand that.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's I really think, because I mean, when you look at who's the top money earners, who's got the most money, Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are always really close together. So right. I'm sure there's a little of a ego competition going on there, and they're both trying to compete in the same market, and Elon Musk just seems to get there just a little bit quicker.
I think it's because because look at where Jeff Bezos's mind was for a very long time, was growing Amazon.
Right.
And now he's getting into this, where Elon Musk seems to have been a progression, always technological. Right. Progression, with the car, then the space, then the Starlink. So it seems to be he seems to be more focused in this area.
Elon Musk has said that his goal is to colonize Mars. And when you look at all these things put together, they all game towards that. An electric car would be vital on Mars.
Yes.
Obviously, having the rockets, to launch into orbit and then to get to Mars and to land on Mars is vital. And to have the ability to set up, and come back, because I assume that they're going to want two-way travel from Mars, to and from Mars, eventually. To have the satellite infrastructure, to have internet on Mars, at least some information transfer and communication on Mars, is all offshoot of Starlink. So all these things are building towards that. Of course, they've got spaceship they're building, which is going to eventually be the actual module that will go to Mars and land on the planet.
Right. So this is just a wind up for that, and we get the benefit of it.
Exactly.
Good.
And I'm all for it, because I am using it and it works really, really well.
And I have to say, because people can't see this, you're actually very clearer than you have been in a long time. Yeah.
Well, again, I had good upload, but download, but not upload. So my upload would choke, so I'd look kind of grainy and the pixelated and all that. And right now I've got decent upload. So move on to the next part of it. So Starlink's out there. How do you get it? And right now it's luck of the draw, because it's on a beta test.
Okay.
So what it is they're opening cells, and this is part of how Starlink works. Is you're in a hexagonal cell. The Earth has been broken up into these cells, and they have to put a base station, because this is the one big difference between the old style satellite and Starlink is what happens when it goes up to the satellite, it comes back down to Earth in your area.
Okay.
So there's a base station. There's a satellite receiver station about 60, 70 miles north of me. And so when I'm using the internet, when I'm using Starlink, it's going up to the satellite and then down to that base station. And then from that base station, it goes on to internet backbone and the whole works. So it's not going up to satellite, going a long distance and then dropping. The old satellite providers, again, they had one set of satellites, one downlink station. So you go up to the satellite and down to that downlink station, which could be overloaded, which could be affected by weather. This doesn't have those problems. But because you have to go to a downlink station local to you, it limits the number of users that they can have right now.
Okay.
And it also limits where they've put the downlink stations. If they haven't put a downlink station in your area yet, you can't have Starlink.
That's why when you go to their page, it says that it's available to a limited number of users per coverage area.
Exactly.
So, for example, if there isn't anything here up in the Northeast or even close enough, then we can't get it.
Right. And they're focusing more on rural areas,
Right.
on underserved areas right now. So that's why I'm able to get it because,
Right.
like I said, I'm in an underserved area. And actually, there are two base stations. I just remember there's another one that's south of me about 100 miles. So, I'm between stations. So, and there's a map you can go online and see roughly where the satellites are and what stations it's linking to. It's really kind of cool where you can see where the traffic is going. It's kind of fun to figure all that out. So that limits the availability, however, because first of all, there's only so much traffic that can go through that base station right now because of, stage one technology, that they're just, as they're developing the technology, the speeds will increase, but right now it's limited.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the satellites themselves are, they're version 1 satellites that are out there. Well, the version 2 satellites that they're going to start launching soon will actually have satellite or laser links between the satellites.
Okay.
So if your base station is getting overloaded, they can take all your traffic, shoot it over to another satellite that's not overloaded and down. And of course, that's faster than going through like fiber or going through up and down and over.
Right. Okay.
So that'll balance out the traffic more. That'll also allow, say, trans-Pacific internet access, because if you've got a ship or a plane that's out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean, they're too far away to reach a base station.
Mm-hmm.
So then they'll be able to go up to the satellite, over the ocean, and then across to Europe or across the United States or across to Asia and down, and then get on the internet, which could mean we could be seeing Starlink branded Wi-Fi on our planes in, say, 5 years.
Now that would be attractive to a lot of travelers, especially business ones.
Yes, it would. If you could be over the Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the middle of nowhere, and you're still able to do work at high speed. Because let's be honest, aircraft Wi-Fi isn't always great. It's good to have, but it's not high speed because it's limited by where you're at. So anyway, all that long story short, you have to sign up for a beta. And I signed up for the beta back in February. And when you sign up for the beta, you pay $100 deposit, $50 deposit, excuse me.
Okay.
But that $50 goes towards the shipping when you finally get picked. So it costs $50 to ship.
Mm-hmm.
It's $50, but you pay a $50 deposit. The dish and all the equipment that comes with it is $500 right now, which Starlink says they do at a loss. It costs them more than $500 to produce this equipment. And I believe it.
Really?
When we talk here about what you get, I believe it's more than $500 for this equipment. And then it's $100 a month to use it, which was double what I was paying for DSL, but I'm getting more than double speed. So it's worth it for me.
Wow.
So
it sounds like, a rural person's dream at this point.
It really, truly is. And
I wish I could understand. Being where I am, it's hard to, because I'm listening to your cost going, gee, that's way more.
Yeah.
Than what I do right now.
But when I here in a minute, we'll talk about how it compares to the landline and the
Okay. All right.
the LTE. The numbers will become much clearer because the internet is not cheap out in rural areas at all.
Okay.
I mean, you think of, $100 and you've got your internet and your cable and your phone patched in, and they deliver the paper every morning and they give you coffee and for $100. Oh no, out here it's $100 is basic internet.
Wow. Okay.
So when you get the box, when you get Starlink, it comes in this big gray box. It's pretty heavy box, and everything is there, and it's literally plug and play.
Okay.
They actually have it in the box, plugged in. All you got to do is plug the wall outlet in.
Okay, I like that.
I mean, literally, all the cables they're bundled up nicely in there, and it's plugged into the router, and it goes from the router to the Wi-Fi access point, all plugged in, ready to go.
So there's no, picture, one piece of paper with the picture of how to do everything.
Well, there is, but there's like 4 steps.
Oh, that's good.
Step 1, mount the satellite. Step 2, put the power box where you want it. Step 3, put the Wi-Fi router in. Step 4, plug it in.
Wow. I'll take that.
Now obviously there's more to it because you have to put the dish, you have to put dishy where it can see. So you can't have it inside your house. It has to be up, usually like on a roof, someplace where it's got a clear line of sight.
Mm-hmm.
I actually put it, I have a detached garage, and I actually put it on my garage because that was the most clear line of sight. Dishy comes with 100-foot cable. Now, one complaint I do have, this cable is permanently mounted to the dish. It doesn't plug into the dish. It's wired in permanently. And that's a little bit of a complaint because it makes it a little bit harder to run. But you still have 100 feet.
I was going to say, though, if it's permanently affixed to the dish, what happens if the line breaks?
You either patch it or you get Starlink to send you a new one.
Okay.
New dish.
All right.
And so.
Because I do everything in cost too, future proofing. Yeah. Saying, if this is outside, if it's running all over the place, it's easy to probably, with time it will wear. So something that you plug into the dish is more easily replaceable than having to get rid of the whole dish.
And that's why I put the power box in my garage, right below the dish. Literally just went right down from the dish, drilled a hole in the wall, put the power box inside the garage so that there's less chance of anything happening to that power wire or that wire. And so, like I said, you got the dish, you got the power box, and that is actually power over Ethernet. So that is the only thing you have to plug in is that power box. And so that provides the power for dish, that provides the power for the Wi-Fi router. And so, that you just plug in the wall. And I mean, that's really simple. You got a black plug that goes to dish, you got a white plug that goes to the rest of your Wi-Fi adapter or whatever. Mm-hmm. And like I said, it comes with a default or a stock Wi-Fi adapter, but you don't have to use the one that comes from Starlink, which, by the way, is, like I said, is power over Ethernet. That only has the one wire that comes in from the power box, which makes it really easy to set it somewhere because you don't have to worry about finding a wall outlet when you've got 500 other things plugged into that same wall outlet.
Yeah, true.
But you can replace that. I actually replaced that with a TP-Link router because it only has one output for Ethernet. That's one complaint I have with the Starlink Wi-Fi. It has an auxiliary port, which is an output for Ethernet. Well, I like to, like you're talking earlier about, having things on running Ethernet everywhere.
Yes.
Well, I really like having stuff on and have things I need to. Like I've got a older printer that is a network printer that only has Ethernet. It does not have Wi-Fi. It predates Wi-Fi being in printers. So you can replace the Starlink Wi-Fi. You don't have to, but you can, which that's kind of nice. But like I said, it comes in the box, ready to go. You just mount the dish, plug it in, you're done. And then, of course, you go through the Starlink app to set up there is an app for that, the Starlink app to set up the Wi-Fi and all that. And then it's just like using any other Wi-Fi. I mean, it's that really, it's really, really, really simple. I'm really kind of impressed how they did that.
It sounds it, but I think he's trying to keep it simple probably because if he's going global with this, you're going to meet a lot of people who aren't technologically savvy.
Exactly.
So this way you can say, here, 4 steps and you're in.
Yeah. And they do have, it sounds like the tech support right now is pretty good. The customer service support, I've been reading, positive reviews that people have had problems, and they've immediately said, oh yeah, we've got a patch that's coming out next week for it. They are updating, it's got firmware in them, cause and they're constantly updating the firmware and everything. And, we got a patch coming next week, or that sounds like the dish went bad, we'll send you a new one. And they're pretty good about, response when there is problems. So that's a good thing. One thing I should mention, by the way, the dish itself is not just like the old receiver dishes. It's actually a computer in itself.
Ooh.
And it does both levels of travel. So both upload and download. But the dish is a computer in itself. And that's why one of the touted features is in, cold weather climates, which of course we know quite a bit about, don't we?
Mm-hmm,
that the dish will actually melt snow off of it. And people thought, oh, it must have a heater in it. No, it's just, it produces enough heat that snow isn't going to stick to it.
That's nice.
Yes, that's going to be very nice. Obviously, I think if you have, blizzard of the century, you might have some problems before but the other thing too is, like I look at my dish and it's usually at about like a 30-degree angle. So if it's hot enough or warm enough that bottom layer of snow melts, but the rest of the snow is just going to slide off of it.
Right.
So it shouldn't be a problem. And
so it won't hinder the signal as traditional dishes might, because they're just conductors basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I haven't had any problems with the signal being hindered. Even, of course, I haven't had it through winter yet, so I won't see for sure. But in theory, the snow shouldn't affect it at all.
Well, you'll be the good test case.
Exactly. And it sounds like we might have a wet winter, so this might be a good one. And so actually, it's a good time to shift over now, talking about comparison. We've kind of hinted at it, but comparison. Mm-hmm. So what is Dishy like compared to other satellite services and landlines? Now, I don't have a lot of personal experience with the other internet, the more traditional satellite internet. I've known people who've had it and they've told me horror stories.
Same here.
The first comparison is it's a lot faster. Good. It's, magnitudes faster. You hear that the traditional satellites, if you're lucky, you might get low DSL speeds, 3 megabit download. And I think a lot of those old satellites, you can't upload from them. They don't upload to the satellite. You have to dial in for upload. So that gives you like nothing for upload speeds. So you can imagine that's not a lot of fun. As I said, Dishy, you don't have to point it. Because if you remember those old satellite services, DirecTV, Dish Network, you have to get out there and, you got the little meter on your TV and you're turning it, or your whoever installs it's turning it till you get good signal, and you screw it down real tight so it doesn't move. Which
is one of the reasons why in our cord cutting experiment, we never went with it, because besides my husband doesn't like things like that where you have to massage them in order to get them to work. We also live in tree land. So being in the Northeast, we have a lot of trees around our house. We're not about to cut them down. So we would have to have it like way up on the house on a pole. And my husband's like, that's not attractive. So it's like, okay, fine.
That is going to be a concern because, like I said, I've got a spot where I'm far enough away from any trees in my yard that I don't have any obstructions whatsoever. But you hear people who, especially people who live out in the mountains where you've got like the tall lodgepole pines and things like that, where that's a real concern, where they do have points during the day that they lose internet because like the tops of the trees are just in the line of sight. It's a fairly narrow band that Dishy has to use to catch the satellite, so it does affect them. And I think people who are thinking of something like this, who live in an area where I live in, should really consider doing a topical with Google, because it'll show you where because it's not just the trees near your house in particular, but how many trees are there really surrounding you. Now there's kind of a neat feature that the Starlink app has where you can go to where you're going to mount the dish and use your phone, and it will show you what are going to be obstructions.
Oh, I like things like that.
Yeah, so of course it uses the GPS and the tilt meters and everything in your phone to figure out what you're holding it at. But it will tell you this will be an obstruction, this won't, this will be clear. And then once the dish is running, you can go into the app and you can see, in bright red, it'll show you this is obstruction. It'll show you blue of here's a clear line of sight. Here's the area we haven't even, black, we haven't even looked at this. We haven't even worried about this. So it's really pretty impressive what they can do and what they can show you that you're going to have it. So that would be something worth looking at. And I think you can do the obstruction test with your phone with just the app. You don't have to have an account. You don't have to have, beta. So you can look at that if you're interested to say, hey, is this something that I would be willing to use? So but I will say it's clearly so much better than traditional satellite. Traditional satellite was old. It was clunky. It worked, but barely. Now, when it comes to landline, that's where the comparisons get a little more interesting. As I said, what I had previously, I still have it. I haven't shut it down yet, just because I've had, partially because I've been too lazy, but partially because I want to make sure I have the backup in case there is a problem with Starlink. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I do have old DSL. It's what I would call ADSL, VDSL, whatever they call it, where it's the advanced DSL. So it's 40 megabits down, 3 megabits up. And again, that for one person who's doing, YouTube and watching TV, like I'm a cord cutter. I don't have a cable. I don't have satellite TV. I just have whatever comes over my smart TV. It's fine. It works for me. For a family, that could get bad. And again, for doing things like live streaming, for doing things like we do with this, it has affected us in the past because it's been too slow of an upload. For Dishy, I've been for Starlink, I've been off and on doing speed tests, and I've been kind of graphing them out in a spreadsheet. And right now I am averaging 88 megabits up, or 88 megabits down, 88 megabits down, 17 and a half up.
Okay.
So it's twice as fast download, 5 times as fast upload than my DSL. And I've been averaging 73 millisecond pings, which in comparison, I was getting 22 on the DSL. So it's a little slower, but again, this is something, Joanne, you've done podcasts with me since I've gotten it. We've really never noticed a problem.
No. And I can tell you there were problems before, but not since you've gotten it. No, and there hasn't been problems with quality, because like you mentioned earlier, that the video quality is much clearer, but even the latency is not bad. And they always say if you've got anything less than about 40 latency, you can do live streams, you can do games, you can do So I'm right there. DishLink is right there, and there are times I've had times where I look at here where I had one where it was the app was actually showing degraded service, and I had like 60 down, 8 up, 112 ping. So that was kind of a bad point. There were some issues going on in their network. So you can compare that to, again, DSL, it's much better, but you compare that to fiber. Right. And especially in a really developed area. Because even out here in Montana, where we've got places that have had fiber put in, they don't always use it to its full capacity. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I'm spoiled because I have 500 up, 500 down. Mm-hmm. But we were talking a little bit earlier before we started recording that doesn't always translate when you have wireless in your house, if there's a lot of congestion in your area for people also doing the same thing. And unless you have your house wired Ethernet wise, you're not taking advantage of all of that to begin with. And then there's what I still believe is the throttling.
Yep.
Somewhere, sometimes, why all of a sudden is my TV, if I have all of this power, doing the spinning wheel of death while I'm trying to watch a show. It shouldn't be, in theory, should not be happening if I have that much power. But again, when you live where you are, you don't get some of the advantages of living in a very congested, city/suburban area that's very overmined by, landline companies.
exactly.
And that's just it. And even, I see more and more satellite dishes going up on houses in my neighborhood. And I keep saying, is it any better than what we're doing right now? Because they always complain, when it rains or they sneeze, the satellite goes out.
Right. Exactly.
So,
and I've had Dish Network and DirecTV for years, and it works, but it's still not ideal when there is bad weather, especially the times when you want to watch it because there's bad weather.
Yeah, and you and I live in the bad weather zone. I mean, you live in the snow capital of the world, probably, and I live in the anything can happen from snow to hurricanes.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's one disadvantage, obviously, of satellite service. But, talking about fiber, the town I lived in previously, Malta, was one of the towns that got the entire phone network laid down with fiber. Thanks to, if you remember, President Obama signed a bill that for internet telecommunications. And that was part of that. Part of the result of that bill was us getting fiber. But they would only give us a max of like 50 megabits synchronous.
Right.
So 50 down, 50 up, because they didn't want to upgrade the network leaving town to get to the internet backbone. And there would be times where even with, what we had, it would slow down because half the town is sitting there watching YouTube or something like that, or playing video games or whatever, and it would slow down our connection. So even with what we could get, we oftentimes had throttling just because of overcapacity.
Right. The internet overlords are still there controlling the tap.
Exactly. So this, for me, this is a big advantage for those in places with Fios, with Google Fiber, with, the high-speed cable. You're better off with the landlines. You really are. Even with the problems of Comcast and Verizon and all these other providers, you're better off than Starlink now. Now, again, as I said before, Elon's goal is to make this gigabit Ethernet via satellite. And I know that that's going to be several revisions of satellites and base stations later, but that is the eventual goal. So we'll see what happens. We'll see when that happens. But as for me right now, I'm really, really happy with it.
Good. So what would you say are the pros and cons then for people who are really thinking about?
So the biggest pro is it goes anywhere. As long as your cell is open, you can go there. I've been reading stories of people online who are traveling and they take their dish with them. And then they camp out and they find a cell that's open and they can switch over their address and they're able to use it.
Well, that's one thing. Big pro.
Yeah. And Starlink has said that they want to eventually make an RV version of Dishy so that you would have it assigned to your RV and then you can travel anywhere. And as long as, the cell's not completely full, you can have internet access.
That's an untapped market.
It really is. And that's why I said, in 5 years, we could be seeing all our aircraft, instead of having, Go Internet or whatever they call it, we'll have Starlink instead. Because then it will be worldwide. You can be anywhere in the world and have good internet access. So that's the biggest pro. Again, another pro is you're not tied down to the landline providers. You're not tied down to a cell provider. You've got good internet that can, as long as you've got a clear view of the sky, it works, and it works really, really well. It is low maintenance. It is, like I said, it was plug and play. And once you've got the Wi-Fi configured, you really don't have to think about it if you don't want to. So that's big pros. Yeah, it's there. It works. That, for me, that's the biggest pro. The cons, obviously, is one thing you kind of hint about with your husband is, yes, you have to find a clear sky and you have to mount it like on a roof or on a pole somewhere. I was fortunate that a previous owner had used old satellite internet. So I yanked this dish off and I grabbed the pole and I moved it, and it works great. Because you get those nice mounting poles and they work really, really well. And the dish isn't heavy. The dish it's got some weight to it, but it's not as heavy as the old dishes were, and it's not as bulky as the old dishes were. But you still have to have it outside. You still have to have, clear view of the sky. And again, if you're living in a place with lots of trees, cities could be a big issue. You think of cities with lots of high rises. Even if your apartment has a good view of the sky, there could be high rises that will block your view on regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I'm old enough to remember when satellite dishes first came out for home use. And because I live in an area that has a large Portuguese population, immigrant population, these people in their yards would give up, 3/4 of their land in order to put a satellite dish so they could watch their Portuguese programs. So I remember that. So to see them shrink, and especially to see how small, I think Dishy looks small from what I can see.
I'd say it is smaller than your typical direct TV dish network dish.
Well, is it bigger than a Frisbee? A good size Frisbee?
Yeah. So I'm let's see. I'm looking here, see if I can find some. Okay, so the diameter of the top of the dish is 23 inches.
Okay.
So you figure that 2 foot in diameter.
Okay.
I mean, so it's still smaller than your typical dish, because I think most of those like Dish Network, DirecTV dishes they're oblong, but I think at their widest, they're like 4 foot.
Because I'm probably looking at a similar picture. When I look at it, it's almost like one of those flat antennas that you would use in your house.
Yeah, it's like a bowl.
Yeah.
It's like a bowl with a top lid on it, is what it looks like.
Right.
So it's really cool how well it works. But that is again a
you still got to find a place to put it.
You got to find a place to put it, and you got to drill a hole in your house to bring it in. And that's another concern, is there's a Ferris ring on the end of it. You've seen those where they got the little ring on the end of the cable, and that's 3/4 of an inch in diameter. So you got to drill a hole that's wider than 3/4 of an inch, like 7/8 of an inch, to get it into the house that you then have to seal. Now you can buy it. You can get from Dish, from a Starlink, a mounting kit that includes all that stuff. But, so you got to have a drill, and I mean, it's a little bit of hassle. For the first couple of weeks, I actually just open up the screen on my office window here and had the window open a crack and threw it in that way for a while until I could get a better mount over on the garage. So you've got all that issue. You've got 100 foot of cable, so if you don't need that much length, you're going to coil it up somewhere. Those are pretty minor. Honestly, I think that the biggest con right now is it is beta, and that means you're going to have problems once in a while.
Oh, yeah.
About a week ago, there was a day where it was down for about 2 hours, and it was down worldwide for about 2 hours. This wasn't just a regional thing. This was an entire network outage. So something was going on. They got it fixed. It's worked fine since. I haven't had any problems since. You'll have times where there will be, and you can look in the Starlink app, and it will show you how long is it out. If it's over any outage over 2 seconds, it logs in there in the last 24 hours, and it can show you, why it was out and everything. And sometimes it's just searching for satellite. 2 seconds searching for satellite. You're in a gap between satellites. Sometimes it's degraded performance. Sometimes it's just nothing's there. There's no signals. So it is beta, and that is something to be concerned about. That's why, like I said, I'm keeping my DSL. I think it's good enough to use for production use, for your day-to-day use, just with the caveat, you will have outages. You will have problems once in a while.
But I think that's anything. We have outages here with the regular landline fiber stuff too. I mean, not as much, but we still get them. Outages seem to be, it's just a fact of life. And I think I read somewhere that he's planning to come out of beta very, very soon.
Yeah. Sometime in the next year or so, he wants it to be completely available worldwide. So they're building it up, and they're spending a lot of money on it. And we kind of laugh because they're like I said, there are times when I will be between satellites for a second or two, and everything will freeze. And we kind of laugh because it's like, is that because Starlink froze for a second, or, was between satellites for a second too? Or is that just Google Meet, which we use for our... That's
true. We can blame it on Google Meet.
Is it that too? Because that happens too.
Right.
Where there'll be times when you'll just lose connection for a second or two to Google Meet, and it has nothing to do with your internet provider.
Nope.
So it's, again, the by and large, I've had no real problems with it. I've had, with few exceptions, I've had no issues with connecting to it working with it. It's been fast. It's been fun. It's been great to be able to have, decent internet where I can watch a 4K video. I've got a 4K monitor and a 4K TV, and now I can actually watch it in 4K. Get the full advantage of it. So that's been really nice. So I really recommend it. If you can get it, especially again, if you're like me, you're out in a very rural area where your internet selection is slim and none and slim just left town. It's worth it.
But how much does this cost?
As I said before, it's $500 for the dish.
Okay.
$50 deposit to get your name on the list, which again goes into the shipping, so you don't actually pay the shipping.
Right.
$500 for the dish. Mm-hmm. $100 a month.
Okay.
So again, for those of us in rural areas, that's actually pretty good. I was paying $50. I am paying $50 a month for the DSL line, and that the DSL line is less than half of what I'm getting from Dish.
Okay.
So, yeah,
that's not practical for me.
Yeah, for bigger cities, again, it's not. Yeah. And that cost could go down eventually too. As it rolls out more, as it becomes more available, as their technology improves, I have a feeling the costs will go down. I
would think so, because he wants to do this worldwide. And if he is interested in all types of people in all types of socioeconomical situations, right, $100 is going to price a lot of people out. And
they're doing a lot of things where they're working with schools in rural areas where schools are getting the dish for free.
Nice.
Like for free plus 2 years of service. They're working with Native American tribes in rural areas that have had poor or no internet access. They're working in neighborhoods where same kind of deal. So you can tell I keep saying he as in Elon, because he's the driving force behind all this. He wants to see this spread as wide as possible, and not just because it lines his pocketbooks, but because he sees it as a way to help people. And what arguments whether or not it's a moral issue or not, withstanding, the fact is having internet access is almost essential in our day and age.
It is now, and it needs to break all the barriers. We saw that at the beginning of the pandemic, where they were especially handing out equipment to folks who were in lower class situations because they couldn't afford their own.
Right.
So somebody has to kind of unify, or you're going to have a bigger gap between haves and have-nots. Yeah,
and they talk about the technology gap, and that's a big part of it. And I know schools did a lot during that time, and there were organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates organization, stuff like that did a lot to help that. And I think Starlink is one of those where, again, if you got these rural schools, they don't have very good internet access. If they can get this and get their kids on much faster internet, that's huge. That is absolutely huge. So I support it. Obviously, I'm using it. I'm enjoying it. So any other questions about it, Joanne? Or?
Nah, I'm just glad you have something reliable now that'll actually work. I think that's where people are looking at right now. Is this going to be reliable? Will it work for me in a rural situation? And I'm so glad you have something that does that.
Yep. So if you're interested, go to starlink.com, check it out. I can say that they're not sponsoring us. I'm definitely paying them for the privilege. So, so we'd like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who made it possible for us to create Secrets of Technology, including Riley J, Richard S, Andrew S, Linda K, and Jolie G. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And so now we're going to jump on to headlines. A couple of headlines, because we actually went longer than that than I expected, but that's good.
Speaking of outages.
Yeah, speaking of outages and internet and things that probably should have stayed out. Oh, that's my commentary. On Monday, Facebook and associated apps and sites had a 6-hour outage. You just could not get to them. You couldn't use Messenger. You couldn't use Facebook, Instagram. I know there's lots of Instagram people that were hiding in a corner. I can't post.
Ooh. And you know what? I missed it all.
I did too.
Believe it or not, we were, and you'll see this with my picks of the week. We were going to back and forth to New Jersey to pick up a rescue dog. Ooh. So all of this time we were in the car. So before we left, I had because I work on the Facebook page for my work. I had posted something, and then I was in the car and wanted to post that we had picked up the dog. That's when I noticed there was a problem. I was like,
yeah,
gee, I wonder what's happening. We finally turned on the news maybe about half an hour from home, and Facebook's been out. Really? I missed the whole thing.
Yeah, see, I did too, because I turned off Facebook as far as like I got rid of the browser tab. I removed the app from my phone a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of go through these phases where I get on it and like, no, I don't need this, and get rid of it. And the only thing I use is Messenger, and it's like, well, I've got a friend who usually every day will send me a quick message or whatever. Like, boy, she's been kind of quiet today. Oh, okay, no big deal. I never sent messages, and I didn't really want to talk to anyone, and okay, well, no one could talk to me because it was out all afternoon.
And I do agree with you. I bet you there were those addicts, and I'll use that term, who were sitting around, sweating for 6 hours because they couldn't post their lunch.
They're refreshing Instagram every 5 seconds.
Right.
Work. So what happened was, basically there was a glitch in Facebook's DNS information, domain name service information. So for those who don't know how the internet works, or not, I assume most of our listeners are pretty familiar with the basics how the internet works, but just in case, DNS, domain name service, is the address book, the phone book for the internet. So you type in facebook.com, it goes to a server that says, facebook.com is at IP address 1234, whatever Facebook's main IP address is. And then your computer goes, okay, now I know how to send to Facebook. It doesn't know how to send to facebook.com directly. It has to look up the address of Facebook. Well, to help that, there's routing service called BCP. I forgot to look at what BCP stands for. Border Gateway Protocol, which says, okay, we've got these groups of networks, these big groups of networks. And you can imagine Facebook has their network because they've got so many servers, so many computers, so many, card swipers to let you get in, securities card readers to get into your house, into their building. And by the way, it sounds like those were down too in this process. Well, this BCP says, if you're looking for these addresses, they're here. Here's how you get to them. They're signposts saying, how do you get to there? Well, for some reason, Facebook was trying to update that, and instead of updating it, they deleted the whole thing.
Whoa.
So basically, the internet did not know how to get to Facebook. The servers were up. You just couldn't get there from here.
I just thought Mark Zuckerberg was unhappy with the night before. So he just threw a tantrum and, shut the whole thing down. But this is even more interesting that somebody just screwed that up.
Basically, they wiped out any way of getting to their servers. And so that meant even the people who work at Facebook, because don't think of these services like Facebook and Google and Amazon and stuff like that, where you've got the big building where they're in their offices, and in the basement of the building is their server farm. Those days for large companies are gone. They've used distributor server farms. They use Amazon. They use other providers that have just big warehouses full of servers. They couldn't get to those servers. They couldn't connect to those servers to fix the problem.
Wow.
So they had to actually physically send someone to the server farms and plug in the information manually.
Ooh.
So that they could bring them back up so they could fix the problem.
See, it is a plug. Somebody unplugged something.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the old IT guys. Have you turned it off and back on again?
Yep.
Yeah. Somebody turned something off they weren't supposed to, and so they had to work hard to turn them back on. And Facebook uses its own DNS information as well. So they don't use like Google's DNS server. I don't know if anybody knows this, but how many people know this, but Google actually has public DNS servers that you can use to connect to. But Facebook has their own. And so even though all their information was fine, it couldn't get to the rest of the internet.
Right. And it didn't just take Facebook down. It took Instagram, WhatsApp, and Oculus, which I found very interesting.
Everything owned by Facebook, because after they bought these services, WhatsApp and Oculus especially, and Instagram, they pulled them inward. They pulled them into their servers, their DNS information. so that they had control of it.
Now I can see where this would be very, we make the jokes about Facebook and Instagram and maybe a little bit of Oculus, but WhatsApp is something that is used by a lot of people to communicate.
Exactly.
So being down for 6 hours.
Yeah. As is Facebook Messenger. I mean, that's a very important messaging platform as well. I know a lot of people who use that.
I don't use it as much, but
right.
WhatsApp I know because I have a friend who's going to be moving to Italy, and that's one of the things we're considering using to keep in communication. So I know it's vital. So yeah, okay. I'm not going to make the joke. That must have been very distressing for those folks.
Yeah. So you can imagine that there some heads are going to roll over this one.
Oh yeah, somebody's out of a job.
Zuckerberg lost a bunch of money off his stock because of course the stock tanked as soon as it happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all funny money anyways, because it's not like he actually can use it for anything. He just has it. But so if things seem a little bit quieter on the internet on Monday, that's why.
Again, I was in a car. Didn't much notice.
Yeah. And like I said, I wasn't using it at all. So, so I didn't notice it either. Speaking of Facebook, one reason why maybe it shouldn't have come up in the first place. Facebook used facial recognition without consent over 200,000 times, says South Korea's data watchdog.
That's concerning.
That's very concerning. There's been privacy concerns about Facebook for many years, and this is just one more reason why people should be concerned. So Facebook alone was ordered to pay 6.46 billion won, the South Korean currency, which is equivalent of $5.5 million US.
Wow.
For creating and storing facial recognition templates of 200,000 local users without proper consent between April of 2018 and September 2019. Mm-hmm. And then another $22,000 US penalty was issued for illegally collecting social security numbers, not issuing notifications regarding personal information management changes, and other missteps.
Yeah, but Facebook's not the only culprit here.
Oh, no.
Now we have Netflix and Google, and that's what I want. Netflix, I want to try to understand, because when I watch Netflix, I'm mostly watching it on a television set, not something with a camera that shoots back at me. But
so Netflix,
those are three heavy companies.
Yeah, so Netflix only had to pay $188,000 US because they collected data from 5 million people without their consent, plus another $2,700 US for not disclosing internal transfer of the data.
Okay.
So South Korea apparently has very strong internet privacy or data protection laws, kind of like the EU, same kind of deal. And I guess Netflix was collecting more data than they were supposed to, or at least letting people know they were collecting. Because, Netflix, they're collecting data on what you're watching, how long you're watching. If you start a show and you stop it, they know what, when you did that. They've got, what are your preferences? What shows are you more likely to click on to watch than others? What types of shows do you like? What types of shows don't you like? Family members and all that kind of stuff. So they're collecting a lot of data.
My initial response is I want to say everybody has better control over their data in this world except America. But on the other hand, we Americans like some of that. We like that convenience.
Yeah.
Of having, if I'm watching a whole bunch of different things, Netflix is now saying, okay, if you like Fuller House, then maybe you will like this one, this one, this one, and this one. And it's not advertising. It's just data collection and saying, okay, this is what you're watching. So we'll give you more of what you're watching and not throw, some kind of transformer at you because you don't watch that at all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's the same thing with like Google, where we like being able to have it figure out, okay, every week you go to this place. So let's make that a regular appointment that I'm going to alert you on. Hey, in 10 minutes, you need to be at this place, right?
Mm-hmm. But then we don't like that at the same time.
Yeah. So we don't want our data misused. We want Google and Facebook and stuff to use our data to make our use of their services better.
Mm-hmm.
But what we don't want is the abuse of it. Like, Facebook talks about here about the the facial recognition and
that bothers me.
And illegally collecting Social Security information and stuff like that. I don't want Facebook to have my Social Security information, especially when these services are so easily hacked. And that happens because I just saw today like that the Twitch streaming service got all of their data hacked.
And
not just their database, but also the source code for their site.
No. Ouch.
Everything. Everything that is Twitch just got hacked and released on the internet.
And it's not just technology, people. Believe it or not, I got a notice Monday that my genealogy program, okay, now this is a benign genealogy program out of France. They have their own online, tree type of thing like Ancestry and Family Search. That got hacked. So now I have to change my password. And I'm like, who wants to know who your dead relatives are, other than other people who want to know if you're one of their relatives? Exactly. Why are you hacking something like that? For what information? Are you trying to use it for other nefarious things? Made up IDs or something? I don't know. Why would you hack that? Twitch, I think, would have a little bit more of a problem.
Oh yeah, because you got money transferring there. You got
why you have to Herodes? They're a benign company. Or at least I think
because any data can be used to attack someone. Any data can be used for any kind of purposes. It can be sold. It can be, like you said, fake IDs and stuff like that. So there's ways you can do it.
I guess.
But as a conclusion for Facebook, it's been ordered to destroy all facial information collected out with consent or obtain consent, and it was prohibited from processing identity numbers without legal basis. It was also ordered to destroy data and disclose contents related to foreign migration of personal information. It was also told to make it easier for users to check legal notices regarding personal information. So
get rid of my facial recognition. Most of the time when I'm looking at Facebook, I don't have my makeup on. So
yeah, I don't want you to see it.
Yeah, I don't want you to see that.
So speaking of security, Windows 11 just came out.
Yay.
And Microsoft announced that Windows 11 on unsupported PCs means no security updates either.
Come on. Why are we playing with that issue?
Well, because one issue of Windows 11, and as I've mentioned before, I've been playing with Windows 11 off and on my second drive on my Hackintosh. And one thing it wants is called a TPM, Trusted Privacy Module, I can't remember exactly what the P stands for, but it's a chip within your computer, or it's a protocol for a chip within your computer that handles security. It's like the M2 chip or whatever it is in Apple, the T2, whatever the security chip is in Apple. It's a security chip is basically what it is. And one thing, it is required for Windows 11. Now, there are ways to install Windows 11 without using this chip. It will yell at you, but you can do it. Well, what Microsoft has decided is that instead of saying, fine, we're going to give you security patches, even though your computer is more insecure than we want it to be, they're just saying, no, you have to get a computer that has this chip. And to be fair, this chip has been available for a while. It's not something that's new, relatively new. But if you've got, your 11-year-old laptop that came with Windows Vista or, Windows 7, it might be time to upgrade that laptop, is basically what they're saying.
But some people are such light users that they don't see the need. And I think part of this now with Windows, which is making me very itchy with Microsoft, is first you were paying for it, then now you're not paying for it. But they don't want, maybe you could pay for this one or maybe not pay for that one. And it's just like, either give it to the people when they buy a computer or don't, or make them buy it like we were doing before. One or the other. We know when we get a Mac, we get the operating system with it. We get it upgraded all the time. Microsoft is not playing a game here, and I don't know what their end game is on it, but it's becoming confusing for the average user. I'm not talking about the technology geek. I'm talking the average user who has an 11-year-old Vista computer who can still run Windows.
Right.
And doesn't care about the bells and whistles. They just want their security. That's all they're worried about.
And let's be honest, someone has an 11-year-old laptop. How quickly are they going to jump to Windows 11 anyways? At best, they might have upgraded to Windows 10. at best.
Right.
Maybe Windows 7, and part of it is Microsoft wants to make Windows a service, but a free service, because they don't really make money on Windows anymore. They make monies on Office 365. They make money on Microsoft Azure. They make money on the servers. They make money on services, and they make a lot of money on stuff like that.
True.
So they're happy to just give away Windows. And yes, if you go buy a Walmart or an Amazon computer, it's going to have Windows preloaded.
Right.
You just don't have to think about it. It's more for people who, like me, who build computers.
Right.
We assemble computers from the parts, where it becomes a concern. And yes, I bought Windows 10 for this computer, and I want to say it was Windows 10 Pro was like $100 or whatever. It wasn't much of anything relative to what it used to be. But they want you to be upgrading to the latest version because it keeps you locked into their software.
Right.
Keeps you using their software. But at the same time, Windows 10, I don't remember what the end of life is for Windows 10, but it's a long ways off. So a person can continue to use Windows 10 for years and we'll still get security updates. We'll still get patches, that'll come downstream from Windows 11. So you'll be fine with that. It's just saying if you want to go to Windows 11, you're probably better off making sure you have one of these, and it will show up in your BIOS as I can't remember what mine shows up as. I forgot to write that down. But it's some kind of, security, Intel security or something like that. It's just a chip on your board that supports the security program, this TPM security protocol. It's honestly, I don't think it's a big deal. I'm just saying, if you're worried about this, just don't upgrade.
Right.
Just stick with Windows 10. Windows 10 works great. It's a good operating system for Windows.
Yeah, exactly. But you're going to get those people who call into the tech guy who are, just your average person. They hear the hype about the new Windows 11 and they've tried it and now they've just screwed up their computers.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
the problem. I'm trying to get people to understand. Please not so much hype then, and whatever.
They do say that it will not let you use the automated upgrade, the standard Windows upgrade, if your computer is non-compliant. You have to download the Windows ISO, the Windows disk image.
Okay.
And do it that way. So this isn't something that users should stumble upon.
Good.
If you're doing it this way, you're doing it because you know what you're doing,
right.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Or you're too stupid to realize you probably shouldn't be doing that in the first place.
True. Okay, rant over.
Yep. So one last quick news item that Joanne threw in there because it's good news. The Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown will be on PBS.
Yay!
So I didn't realize this, but Apple TV bought out the rights to all the Peanuts videos.
Oh, yes, and it was a huge kerfuffle last year because all of a sudden people couldn't get, it's been on CBS for how long?
Yep,
and
exactly.
They couldn't get it, and so Tim Cook said, "Fine, we'll just give it to you for free on Apple TV Plus while we're doing the free thing." But now they're not doing the free thing anymore.
Yep.
So I'm glad that they partnered with PBS because these are, for better or for worse, however you feel about it, they're still American classics for television, and they're not just kid stuff. People have grown up with this, shared it with their kids, and now their grandchildren. So to have an outlet for, through public broadcasting, that was a very smart move. But of course, all month you can watch it on Apple TV Plus.
Yeah. Well, and we all have those shows. We all have it's Great Pumpkin, at Halloween time. Christmas, it's the original cartoon Grinch, not the new ones.
Or Rudolph the
Red-Nosed
Reindeer. Yeah.
Or Frosty, or even the Charlie Brown Christmas special. These are shows that we grew up watching.
Right.
Every year. We wait for them, we expect them, and we're disappointed when they don't show up. And so I'm glad they're doing this, and I hope they continue to do that. Traditionally it was on ABC here in the United States. Now it's going to be on PBS this year, and that's fine. It is disappointing, though, that it got locked behind the Apple TV paywall, that these classic shows that have paid for themselves many times over. Right,
but if you're going to complain about that, then you need to complain about all the stuff that's locked behind Disney Plus.
Oh, I'm for all of that, but still.
It's Apple's not the first one to this game, but they seem to be the one, because it's Charlie Brown, they're the ones getting yelled at.
Well,
but yeah.
And I see that with Star Trek because, of course, now with Paramount Plus, CBS buying Viacom, now all the Star Trek resources, all the shows are slowly going behind the Paramount paywall.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't right now. You can watch every classic Star Trek except Star Trek the Animated Series on Amazon Plus. And now Hulu just lost a bunch of their Star Trek series.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
This is the future, but at least you can watch Charlie Brown on over-the-air TV one more time, October 24th on PBS. So that's all our headlines, all our news. We definitely covered plenty of good stuff here.
We did.
So let's go on to our picks of the week, and I'll let you go first, Joanne.
Well, I have two quick ones. Usually I'm struggling for one. For those of you who have a laptop set up, on your desks, either at work or at home, sometimes trying to find the real estate to put your laptop down on a desk, it's taking up other real estate that you need for papers or whatever. So I bought for my office a vertical laptop stand from a company called Godspin. Now, I know nothing about their theological, affiliation, but I'll tell you, it's an adjustable. And it kind of caters to the Mac, and I have a 16-inch MacBook Pro. So you can this is adjustable so that it goes up to 20 inches, that you can fit something there. I liked it so much on my desktop at the last place I worked at that I bought one for home. But now I had the idea, well, if you can put a laptop in there, can't you put a Mac Mini in it?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a Mac Mini at my new office, and again, I need the real estate. So I bought another one, flipped it up on this, and it's working just fine. It's very nice to have the ports also more available than way in the back.
Right.
So now the ports are on one side, and I can quickly connect everything to it that I need. So this is it's $25.99 on Amazon. And again, if you're into the Mac stuff, you can buy it in either black, gray, or silver, and it matches your Mac equipment very nicely. The second pick that I have, because of the new dog, by the way, whose name is Maggie. She's a 5-year-old Karen Terrier. Now Dom and I love Wise cams, those little cubes that we can put around the house. And I have a Wise Cam 1, version 1, that I haven't used in a while, and I wanted to use it for her now when I go to work. And somehow I think I may have missed an update or two on either firmware or software, and it doesn't seem to be working for me. So I went out and purchased the version 3, which now has color night vision, and it can be used both indoors and outdoors. So if we decide to, if the other one ever gets back online for indoors, we may stick this one outside. It has the audio that you can talk to the dog with. It works with your Alexa. I don't know why it doesn't work if it works with Alexa, Google, and if this, then, why isn't it working with Apple? I don't know why it's not working with Siri. And it should be. But again, these are very small cubes. They give a great picture. There's an app on the other side that you, as with anything else, you get all the information through. And it's $35.98. Okay, on Amazon. So in the new dog, I'll now be able to see her in living color also at night from upstairs, because she's sleeping downstairs until she's potty trained. So those are my two picks for this week.
That's great. Yeah, I'll have to check out these Wise. I've been thinking about getting an outdoor camera, and of course, you look at the Nest or the Ring ones, and they're much more expensive. They do much more, but
but what do you want for outside, really? And that's we're looking for this for outside as well. And they do have some kind of a companion solar panel. Because if you think my husband doesn't want to put a pole with a satellite on his house, he doesn't want to wire up. He wants something that's going to be either battery or solar powered, sticking it on the outside of his house. So Wise is a good product.
Yeah, it's great. I'll have to check that out. Good pick. So my pick is an operating system. Now, of course, Apple gets a lot of love here because we got a lot of Apple fanboys.
Yes, and girls.
And girls. And we Windows 11, of course, just came out, and that's big news. But another operating system is on its way out. It just the source code, open source code for it just got released, and that's Android 12.
Ah.
The new version Android is coming out. Now, it's not available for the phones yet, but they just yesterday, I believe it was, released or 2 days ago, Monday, I think it was, they released the source code for it. So for those who don't know, Android is by and large open source, where you can actually go and download the Android source and make, if you know what you're doing, make your own version of Android. Now, you're not going to have all the Google goodies that you have to get from Google themselves, but you will have, the base operating system and all that stuff. And so they released Android 12, and it really isn't, it is a big release, but it isn't. It's not one of these releases that packs a whole bunch of features, and a lot of it is look and feel. One of the big complaints about Android for a long time that Google has worked very hard over the last few releases is that it looks very disjointed. It doesn't have a common look and feel. And Google has worked very hard with what they call the material interface, material UI, to integrate a lot of the look and feel of Android. Well, this one sounds like it's a much bigger jump in that, making it much more modern, make it much more sleek, much more clean. So that everything looks more integrated. It looks much more of one unit. And of course that helps app developers, because then they don't have to try to reinvent the wheel. Early Android didn't have a lot of real strong UI directions. So they went all sorts of ways. Well, that's kind of being pulled together. And so that helps a lot. The one thing they've been working on is privacy issues. That's obviously a big concern. We talked again about, Facebook and privacy issues and stuff like that. So they've been doing a lot to make the privacy aspect a lot better, that they actually have a dashboard to see what apps have used things like your camera, your mic, your location, things that you're worried about, permissions controls. They're trying to make them much easier to use so that you can look at an app and say, okay, this app has this, this, and this. Well, I only want it to have this when the app's being used. I don't want it to have this. I don't want to have that. This is fine, and so on. So they're working a lot to make it easier to use. One thing that's interesting they've added is that you can disable the microphone or the camera right from the notification pane. So on Android, you pull down once, you see your notifications, you pull down again, and there's a pane that lets you turn off your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and put on airplane mode and turn on your flashlight and all that stuff. Well, they've added now too where you can turn off your camera and your microphone. So if there's an app that you're suspecting are using it, or you could leave that off until you want to use it.
That sounds handy.
Yeah, kind of the digital version of the shutter over your webcam. Where you can just turn it off altogether. It just won't work until you say it does. And so if you do have an app that you're concerned about, it won't grab your microphone right away. It won't grab your camera right away. So there's some of that stuff. Cookies, they've done some work with cookies. They've worked a lot with notifications to make notifications easier. And I've really kind of enjoyed some of the changes where you'll have conversation notifications, where you got certain apps like a messenger app, WhatsApp or whatever, where if you're in a conversation with someone, all those notifications will show up in one spot instead of within the rest of your notifications. Now, I try to keep my notifications fairly clear because it irritates me when they're there, but I know people that they don't worry about that so much. So that lets, so there's lots of changes. Like I said, a lot of it is graphical interface. One thing that looks interesting, I'm looking forward to, is true one-hand mode. Because I've got a bigger phone, it's hard to reach like the way top of it. Well, you can swipe the app down from the top, and it will put it in the bottom half of the screen. So you can do all your work on that app with one thumb, basically one hand. So you don't have to be worrying about using both fingers to do work, both hands, holding the phone with one hand and tapping with another. So there's lots of little things, and of course they're working on, graphic, improving the camera capabilities and stuff like that, like everything else is. And then they're going to be eventually bringing out Android 12.1, which is focused on the foldable phones, because there's a lot more Android phones that are foldable. So that'll be interesting to see how that will look when they're actually making a version of Android that's dedicated towards those, what they can do with that, and then how that's going to go forward. So lots of little things coming out with Android 12. I'm waiting impatiently to get it on my phone and play with it, but because it looks interesting. I mean, the new interface and everything looks really good. It looks clean, and I've been seeing some of the interface elements coming through on Android, on my Android, because it comes through from the apps, like the calendar app, the Gmail app, things like that.
Sounds like they want to be pretty like another company.
Oh yeah, Microsoft.
Yeah, right.
Hey, that's been a goal of Google for a while, is to make Android look better.
Right.
And it was actually kind of funny. Was it iOS 7? Wasn't that the one where they like completely redid like the fonts and everything?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was about.
And
back
I
in
laughed
7,
at that time because it looked more Android than iOS at that point, because they used a font that was very similar to Android and everything. So
as long as I can find my apps and widgets and know what I'm doing and take phone calls and yeah, I'm good. Doesn't have to be that pretty. Just I don't want it to be minimalist, functional, but just pretty enough to be okay.
Yep. So if you got a Pixel phone, expect Android. They think here in a couple of weeks they'll be ready for Pixel phones. I think LG and Samsung and some of these other providers or manufacturers are going to upgrade their flagship phones here shortly after, by the end of the year, they say. So should be pretty quick. I think Android it's one thing that Google, the manufacturers, have done a better job of getting new versions of Android to their phones quicker. So that's a very good thing. So that does it for us. What did you think of our discussion? Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/starquestmedia, or send us an email to technology@sqpn.com. You can find links from our discussion and picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com. You can help us grow the secrets of tech by writing a 5-star review in Apple Podcast or one of the other podcast directories, and also share the podcast with your friends to help us grow our community and reach more listeners. Until next time, Joanne Mercier, thank you for joining us and sharing the secrets of technology.
Thanks, Father Corey.
And once again, I'm Father Corey Stika. Thank you to listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.